Joining us to talk about that report is West Suburban Republican Congressman Peter Roskam, who just last week got a big promotion in the Republican majority that will control the House come January. Congratulations, Peter. You are now the Chief Deputy Whip.
Thanks, Dane.
What does the Chief Deputy Whip do?
Well, it's largely a liaison of trying to make sure that the positive agenda that a lot of Republicans campaigned on and obviously were entrusted with the majority on November 2nd actually becomes law and moves out of the House of Representatives.
Now, how are you going to use the leadership post?
Well, I think, back during the past several months, we articulated a pledge to America, which said let's concentrate on getting the economy moving forward, concentrate on getting spending under control, and some of these other national priorities, and trying to enact that pledge now that Republicans have been entrusted with the majority.
Let's talk a little bit about the Deficit Commission that we just spoke of a few moments ago. It couldn't pass its own committee, but I understand a lot of the ideas raised in this report are being given serious consideration by both sides. Which ones do you like?
Well, I like the idea of spending restraint. I think if you look back historically, over the past 2 years, the net number of new federal employees, for example, that has come onto the federal payroll, it's up 158,000, and that doesn't include defense or homeland security or some of these other areas. So when the Deficit Commission says that it needs to go after the federal bureaucracy, for example, and have a restraining influence on the growth of government, that's a good thing. What I'm concerned about is when the Deficit Commission says that now is a time to raise taxes or building in triggers on raising taxes. I think that ultimately will have an adverse impact on job creation. And so that's where I appreciate the work that the Commission did, but I'm concerned about the idea of raising taxes right now.
Well, what's wrong with raising taxes for some of the highest income earners, which is what's really on the table at this point? The highest the marginal tax rate for the top earners in the country right now is 35%. If the tax cuts expire, it goes up to 39.5%. But historically, other Republican administrations, under President Reagan, it was 50%. Under President Nixon, it was 70%.
Here's what's wrong with it. If you want to create an environment where people are getting jobs, then what you've got to do is create an environment where the entrepreneur who is filing as an individual, and a lot of these companies in my district, for example, are known as Subchapter S Corporations. They're filing as individuals at the individual rate. That type of company isn't going to bring new folks on in an environment where their taxes are going to go up. That's the drama about all this, which is why this week 20 Democrats in the House agreed with all the Republicans that said, let's not do this. Let's not go about this season of uncertainty by making it more uncertain and more tumultuous for companies to bring people on.
What about some of the sacred cows they're willing to take on in this report, including potentially eliminating or downsizing the deductibility of mortgage interest?
Look, I don't think that's realistic. I think, with all due respect to the commissioners, what they're doing is they're framing a debate, Dane, which is helpful in my view, but the idea of taking away a mortgage interest deduction when housing is in the tank and the foreseeable future for the next couple of years isn't looking bright at all. I think that's counterintuitive and actually the wrong direction to go.
But then where does the added revenue come from? Because clearly you can't cut your way out of this deficit problem. You're going to have to bring more money in somehow.
Well, I think the public would be ready for a conversation about increased revenues if they were actually convinced that Washington, D.C. had heard the message and was restraining itself. But they've not seen that. I mean, over the past...
What do you want to see in terms of restraint?
Well, what I want to see is let's go back to about 18% of GDP, which is how much the federal government should be costing the economy as a whole.
Which is what right now? What's the number?
Well, right now it's well over 20, and it's probably 22 or 23 off the top of my head. So it's once you get down to those sorts of lower numbers, then you've got a situation where the economy is growing. Remember, the genius of Ronald Reagan was to unleash a market so he could actually grow his way into prosperity, and I think that's what a lot of folks are yearning for.
Do you get the sense the White House is going to be tacking to the right a little bit and trying to compromise with the Republican Party on some of these issues?
I've given this a lot of thought, and I am completely ambiguous. I cannot figure out the direction that President Obama is going to go. It seemed like the person that I served with in the state Senate, I thought would have sort of, the classic Washington verb is pivot by now.
And you and he worked together on a number of bills,
yeah,
right?
we did. And I think that there's an opportunity to work on tax policy. I think that there's an opportunity opportunity to work on export policy that can try and make things more robust. A lot of Republicans want to work with President Obama on an export agenda, and he says he wants to double exports in 5 years. I think we can help him do that.
At the same time, is there not also a concern that the Republican Party may be more intransigent than ever because of the infusion of new blood in this last election process? A lot of these young kids are coming in, and they don't want to compromise with anybody. They were elected with an agenda, and they're not going to bend on that agenda.
Well, some people would call it intransigence. Other people would call it clarity. And look, there's about 83 new Republicans in the House of Representatives. By contrast, when I came in 2006, I was one of 13 new Republicans. So the country, and I think particularly independent voters, have given the Republicans an opportunity to try and concentrate on the economy, and there's going to be a real effort to do that.
Well, some of the veteran Republicans actually approving large parts of this report, and the younger Republicans saying no to much of it. Do you see a potential split, a fissure within the Republican Party?
Well, it's one thing for unelected Republicans to advocate on positions, and it's another thing for people who are accountable to voters to advocate for positions. So you'll see that there's 3 House Republicans on the Debt Commission, for example, Paul Ryan from Wisconsin, Jeb Hensarling from Texas, and Dave Camp from Michigan. All of them looked at it, seriously participated, but
voted against it.
Voted against it for the reason that I articulated a minute ago. That is, they don't believe that now is the time to raise taxes. They agree with 20 Democrats in the House. Peter Orszag, who just left the administration, Christina Romer just left the administration, who said, don't raise taxes in a recession.
All right, Congressman, good to see you.
Thanks,
Congratulations
Dave.
again on that post.
Thanks very much.
See you in the next few weeks.